Welcome back to the link, and we have got in the Zoom room one of our favorite people, Mr. Edward Birn, the Director of the Department of Administration. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Sabrina.
How are
Chris
you?
and Jason. Morning.
How
I'm
you
good.
been?
How are you doing?
Yeah, we're all right. You know, I'm just waiting and counting down the days for Bridgerton to return.
I think it's a long while, but
I
I'm
know.
sure.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I haven't seen the schedule yet for it, but I'll be watching it very closely.
But speaking of waiting, we had interviewed quite a few people, some directors, about this whole COVID differential pay situation. And I'm wondering if you had any updates. Is it a DOA thing, or is it the individual agencies that are just behind with the paperwork?
It's, I'm just looking at the report that I had last Friday.
Okay.
It's an issue with the agencies. Process these, and I know there are special timesheets, and it takes a little bit of extra work because we ask, because of the rules, we ask people to report on separate timesheets. But we process them as soon as we get them. The whole purpose of this COVID pay was to reward people for being in a potentially hazardous situation. So we want to reward those people according to the terms set out in the executive order as quickly as possible.
Right. And so, from what we understand, a lot of them have been waiting since, I want to say, January. Is it also an issue of whether or not we have money to pay this out? And is it CARES money that's paying this out?
Yes, it's CARES money that's paying it out. The CARES money, was a fixed amount of money of just under 118 million. We've actually spent all that money, but we will still pay out COVID pay adjustments that are in accordance with the executive order, whether or not it comes from the CARES Act money or not.
I see.
We have made that undertaking, and we will pay it out.
So, on average, how much was being paid in COVID differential pay every pay period?
It was about, it depended because, as you know, it started out with 3 bands and a high band of 25%, and now we're down to a single band of about of 10%. So at its peak, it was roughly like 120,000 a pay period. It's now down to more like 40 or 50,000 a pay period. But on the bright side, like I just told you, I think the last time I spoke to you, on overtime, we're absolutely up to date. And I do thank all the reporting agencies for cooperating with us in that endeavor. It's very important, obviously overtime has legal implications, so we pay overtime on time. But even beyond that, we want to pay people for working these extra hours.
Have you received any of the paperwork from these agencies that are outstanding, or have an idea of how many agencies haven't submitted their paperwork to the Department of Administration for this COVID differential pay?
Well, I have a report that which pay periods we have and which pay periods we don't have, and it's actually spread pretty well across many agencies. I know there are some particular concerns with public health because they were on the front line of this effort, and some of their divisions, and they report by division, some of their divisions are behind. So that is obviously a concern to us, and we have been talking to public health, and we're going to offer them some help to get these timesheets processed.
Right.
Most of the other non-reporting agencies are the small agencies that have less than 100 people in, and we're working with them to try and progress those two.
How far behind is public health?
Well, it varies by their division because they're reporting by division. So it varies from 1, 2, 3, 6 pay periods to 2.
Any word on the American Rescue Plan funds?
Every day, I haven't this morning yet because I was going to talk to you, but every day I look on the Treasury website to see when these funds are going to be released. The law gave US Treasury 60 days to pay the territories in particular. The law was signed on March the 11th. So on April the 11th, which is Sunday, I believe, it will be 30 days. I'm hoping, and I know I hear some activity that it's going to be sometime next week, but we're dealing with US Treasury and they're going to determine when we get those funds. But we're ready to get them as soon as we get them.
Right. And when they release it, is that also the same time that the guidelines come out on how you can spend the money?
Well, we hope so. In the last effort, in the CARES Act effort, it was a kind of progressive effort, and we got guidelines, then we got amended guidelines, then we got amended guidelines, and we were required, obviously, to follow all those guidelines. In this particular case, there's a little bit more freedom for the governor to spend the funds as she sees fit. So maybe the guidelines will be less restrictive. But it's obviously helpful if we understand the rules right at the beginning and not having to backtrack. So I do expect some outlines, guidelines when it comes out. That wasn't the case with the rental assistance, where we got the funds and then we got, and we've never had guidelines. We've had some frequently asked questions, but we haven't actually received the guidelines. And I understand they're still being prepared.
Right. And speaking of rental assistance, when we spoke with Bernie and Audrey, they were mentioning that they were still on track to start getting the checks out by the first week of April. It's the first week of April. Has that already transpired?
No, it hasn't. I'm expecting to get some checks out next week. But she updated me with the numbers as of yesterday morning. And at the end of phase 1, which was the pre-application, we got 2,600 applications. We've reviewed about half of those, 1,273. And of those, 637 are eligible. So they move forward to phase 2, which is what causes the payment. In order to get to phase 2, the tenant has to provide landlord type of information. So there's a bit more information required from the tenant in order to move to phase 2. We've got pending final review 59, and of those 25 are qualified. So we'll move to make payment for those next week.
Okay. Only 638 so far eligible? Wow.
Yes. There seem to be quite a few that are ineligible. We found that actually it's a better proportion eligible than we had on the program of Salafi, where almost 60% were ineligible.
Well, I'm going back to the 600 million-ish, Mr. Birn. So obviously you're saying that at the outset it differs from the CARES Act, but like when you say that the governor's going to have more freedom to spend the money as she sees fit, how much freedom just initially do you know that we're talking about here? Because I remember
the big difference
in the beginning it was like, oh, it can replace lost revenues, but it can do more than that?
Yes.
Too?
Yes, the big difference is, as you mentioned, that in this tranche of money, the governor can spend the money to replace lost revenues. And obviously, there has been a significant amount of lost revenues that need replacing. So that's the flexibility that's in this new act. It was a flexibility asked by all the governors of all the states and territories. and fortunately, Congress felt that it was an appropriate change to make.
So it's not like the first round where everything had to be kind of like COVID related.
Well, it has to be COVID related, but there's a slightly looser link. That's what we understand. I mean, like you say, we haven't had the regulations yet, and if I could get into a little bit more detail on that, there were two U.S. departments that were kind of involved in this. There was the Treasury Management that did the first block, and then the Treasury Inspector General was tasked with monitoring it and in effectively providing an audit service for it. So they then issued their own guidelines, and that's why there were so many different versions of the rules and regulations as we went through. And I'm sure a similar thing is happening now, but the whole intent, of the American Recovery Act was, I think, in most of the provisions where money is available, that it is subject to many less restrictions than the legislation that was passed last year.
Will you guys be submitting like what happened with the 118 million, the proposed, I guess, budget for the 660 plus million to the legislature before the governor gets the money?
Well, so we don't know when the governor's going to get the money. We just said the budget for the proposal for the expenditure for the and I believe the latest figure we're going to get, and I think it depends upon our population in relation to the population of all the other states and territories, is our latest estimation that it's going to be just under 620 million. The BBMR are busy compiling their proposals. I mean, they'll submit that when it's complete. I'm just hoping we get the money as quickly as possible, because it's always better to have money in the bank than not.
Right.
What about this thing with Senator St. Augustine where he was, we did a story on it. He was trying to look at the tax code or something and whether or not it would
Something with
affect
the BPT.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, it's the exemptions. Well, there's two things, right? There's the extension of the exemptions to BPT, which is where certain businesses of a certain size pay only 3%, and we can't reduce it below 3% because of our bond indenture. Pay only 3% rather than 5%, and there's a proposal to extend that exemption indefinitely. And the governor has said, if presented with a bill to do that, she will sign it. But at the same time, the idea that we can permanently reduce our BPT, which is currently at 5%, to a 4% or even lower, is not fiscally sound. Everybody knows we're going to get this money from the federal government, but it's not going to come every year. And so when it stops coming, we still have to stand on our own feet. So to reduce BPT and therefore reduce government revenues, when you have no proposals for replacing it, doesn't sound to be a fiscally sound idea. So that's why the administration is saying that it doesn't support a reduction in BPT. And furthermore, the amount of BPT that we're paying, which the 5%, is amongst the lowest of the consumption type taxes that are in force in the territories and the states. 5% I think, in the kind of 25 percentile. In some, I don't know if you've, none of us has visited the States probably lately, but if you go to I think San Francisco, it's like 10.5% or something like that. So 5% doesn't sound too bad, and it's a keystone in the shoring of the government finances. So that's why, that's why there's this whole discussion about whether or not to reduce the rate of BPT, and that's why the administration is not in favor of doing so.
Right. Okay. You good, Bree?
Yeah.
Anything in closing? Let me just ask you, because I'd asked you that they want to say it was like a month and a half ago, maybe even 2 months, you had come on and I'd said like, hey, with this American Rescue Plan, and at the time it was still working its way through Congress. I think it asked something like, is there a chance that we could be sitting really pretty in 2021? And I forget what your answer was, but I'll just ask the same question. What's it looking like, Mr. Birn?
Well, I forget what my answer was too, but I will answer as I see it today. Is it's obviously better to have these funds than not to have them. Having said that, there are many demands on those funds. The president himself, right, has been talking about additional funding for infrastructure, and I'm perfectly sure that everybody will see that we need more investment in infrastructure here on Guam. So if we get some of that money from the infrastructure that he's proposing, infrastructure funding that he's proposing, well and good. But in the meantime, we have many demands upon these funds. It makes, yes, certainly it makes it easier if and one of the big advantages we had is that this wasn't when we got the CARES Act money, and I believe this is going to be the case with the ARP money. It wasn't a reimbursement provision where you have to spend the money and reclaim it. We actually got the money in advance and had it in the bank, and that certainly makes the whole process much easier. But it lasts for a while, right? We've got to make it last. It has to be spent in 4 years. So we want, and revenues, I mean, depends how you calculate it, but the lost revenues, if you look at 4 years worth of lost revenues, it's probably more than the amount that we're going to get. So it's comfortable, but not that comfortable, and we still want to make every dollar go as far as it can.
Thank you, Mr. Birn.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sabrina. I hope you have a good morning, and please keep safe.
Right on. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ed Birn, Administration Director. A couple comments here. Our link viewers always value their input here. Let's see what we got. Aaron Redoble says, that's scary that the governor can do anything she wants with the money. Rosemary Laguatnia, then cut back on government expenses, including more hiring, salary increases, etc. Arthur Dela Cruz says, why are